Hello. It still thrills me an unbelievable amount to know that this happened. And I'm so glad to finally share. Episode 3, we are here with Joe Black Meets, and I am joined by the legendary Dawn French. When Dawn said yes to this, I couldn't believe it. I thought something was going to get in the way and make it not happen, and it happened, and here it is. Just some notes on this one. This one was done over Zoom, so we have a little different sort of audio for Dawn as it's taken from that. So, but I'm sure that can be excused. You know why? Because it's Dawn bloody French. That's why. And again, at the time of recording this, there are no adverts, so if you would like to support me in some way, I'm touring with my show Club Cataclysm this autumn. That is October and November 2022 across the UK and Ireland. You can buy a t-shirt if you'd like. Be sure to leave a lovely 5-star review on the Spotify and the Apple and all of that things, and lovely reviews, and it just helps the podcast grow. Anyway, I shall not keep you any longer. Please enjoy my lovely chat with the bloody lovely Dawn French. Well, hello, Dawn French.
Hello. I'm here talking to you.
And I'm here talking to you. And what this is, what day is it? It's Thursday. It's a Thursday in June. I don't know exactly what date this is coming out, but it's no longer this lovely Thursday in June.
No.
It is another day, another dawn.
Another dawn, yeah. That's me. You know, how often have I put up with all the dawn jokes as a kid? You know, crack of dawn, mist around dawn, endless dawn jokes and endless French jokes. Froggy French, you know, or everyone has their nicknames, don't they?
Well, I'm sorry to add to the pile.
No. It's welcome. It makes me feel actually weirdly. What I did go through my childhood with was a very different nickname, because we went to live in Cyprus for a few years when I was a kid, and so my name Dawn, the rising of the sun, was used in the Cypriot, but by people that were around us and stuff, my mum's colleagues and stuff. So I was called Haravyi, which apparently in Greek Cypriot means the rising of the sun. So and also in Greek Cypriot, if you add on the end of a name mu, just mu very quickly, I think it's MOU, that just means dear, darling. It's just a way of saying sweetheart. And so I was called Haravyi Mu by my own family, which got shortened, of course, to Mu. And actually, my family know me as Moo French. I'm Moo. And all my schoolmates know me as Moo. And in fact, at one point, I even went in the school register as Moo French.
How many identities do you have? You'd be a fantastic criminal.
I'd be a good spy, except for I can't stop talking, so I wouldn't be a good spy because I have to tell everybody everything.
Well, that would, but then, what you said wouldn't necessarily be the trick. You could trick people.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know how your lying is.
I don't think I've got enough guile, to be honest. And I've also got too much to say that is the actual truth, and too much to hear that I want to hear. I'm too nosy about people's actual truth of their actual lives. So I don't think I'd be very good at being slippery or clever.
See, I'm very nosy as well, which is exactly how this thing happened. It's just there's no big grand point. I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to talk to people that I think are brilliant about that. I think they're brilliant. So essentially, it's just me going, so you're quite good.
Well, I'm glad to hear you've got such good taste and that I'm in such good company. That is fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic taste. The guest list is phenomenal, and what a pleasure to have you. Evan, how are you? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'm pretty good, thank you. I'm in a kind of weird transitional part of this year. I mean, like all of us, coming out of the horrible pandemic and retrieving our live work. is very busy, and so it means lots of stuff that was supposed to have happened for 18 months that didn't happen is now happening. So trying to plot a tour, and in the old days, of course, you do a tour that went up one side of the country nicely and down the other side of the country, so you weren't driving all over the place. But because everybody's out looking for the same venues on tour, I'm sort of doing Hull to Bournemouth to back up to Scotland. It's bloody mad. But this is not happening until September, but I've got to write it, apparently.
Was this one meant to be in the before times?
Yes, it was planned for the before times, although we didn't have it actually in, but I knew that I had to get on with writing it or thinking about it. So in a way, I've got no excuse for having not written it because I've had plenty of time, but I was doing lots of other stuff as well. It was a good time, wasn't it, to write a book? And I owed a book to Penguin, and it was time to write another novel. So that's what I did. I calmed down and wrote that book. So I didn't write this tour. So now I'm slightly, how am I going to get it all done in time?
Well, I keep hearing this, that the kind of pandemic, there were things that were supposed to happen that actually the time buying worked in their favor. Like when I was talking to Joe Lycett, they were saying that their management had said, right, we think it's time you do Wembley. And then Joe sort of had a sort of freak out about it. And then they had done so much stuff from when the management had suggested it, and they said, no, I don't want to do that, too big. And then made work that they were so proud of in the interim that now they have a show that they are happy to do at Wembley, and now they're doing 2 nights at Wembley.
Yeah.
So it's funny how it kind of buys more time. Your show, by the way, the one you're touring, is Dawn French is a huge twat.
Correct.
Is
That's
that
correct.
one? Yeah. Any particular inspiration for the name?
Well, here's the thing. I went out on tour a few years back with a show about my life, essentially, called 30 Million Minutes, which was how long I'd been alive at that point. And that was about, family, life, and all the trials and tribulations, all the decisions, all the things I didn't have an answer to. What is this all about? What's that all about? And it was me kind of opening up, because I'd had people write books about me and stuff like that. I wanted to go out and do a tour that was me telling my truth about all the things that have happened in my life. And of course, when you tell the truth about stuff in your life, about divorce and infertility and, but problems and parents dying and suicide, which has happened in my life, sadly, with my dad, when you're open and honest about these things, of course, you relate to people in your audience. Everybody's had a shitty stuff. Everyone's had difficult stuff. Everybody. So that was what that tour was about. That was very personal. And what I didn't do really was touch on any career stuff, because in my head, I'm thinking, well, that's out there. That's what everybody knows. Anybody. Anyway, it's there for everyone to see. Surely that's a bit dull, and I didn't want to tell kind of lovey stories about how interesting it was to have this particular prop in a particular play. I just didn't want to beat up my own bum with that. But I've got a very good friend in Australia, Julia Morris, who's a stand-up. And when I was there, she said to me, "You're missing a trick here." She said, you need to do the opposite of this tour as your next tour, which is stories about your career, but like behind the scenes. And I started to think about that and thought, yeah, actually, that's right. Instead of just, I was in Harry Potter and this was the part I played. What about all the mistakes I made at the interview for it, at the audition, when I turned up on the set? What about the fitting and the stupid things I said to people? And it seems that I am a person who has been a massive twat about quite a lot of things in my life. I've got things wrong. I've misunderstood things. I've misheard things. I've clumped around insensitively on all kinds of stuff. And I've made lots of mistakes. But those mistakes are the glorious moments where we're all wankers. We are all wankers.
Absolutely every single one of us is a wanker.
We are wankers. And I love other wankers. And I'm fed up of life being about being Instagram perfect and everything being perfect, and here's my perfect life, and here's my perfect dog, and here's my perfect everything. That isn't it. That isn't real life. That isn't how I connect to anyone. I feel a disconnect from perfect people. I like wankers. And I like us all to own up to those moments. So rather frighteningly, once I started to think of the moments where I have been a surprisingly adept twat, I realised there were many of them, far too many of them, and so it's easy to tell the stories.
Yeah, I mean, British comedy is full of, not that I'm calling everyone a twat in a derogatory way, but in the way you've said, that I think British comedy breeds a certain kind of delicious twat, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And you're in great company. I mean, is that strange when you're doing sort of more, I don't want to say straight acting things, but with not other British comedians.
Yeah.
How is that dynamic?
You mean when I do it for TV?
I mean, something like, say, Death on the Nile, for instance.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, very serious actors all around you. That
was very frightening, really. I mean, it was delicious in one way because it was a great big dollop of an American, super-sized, big budget film. You know, Jennifer and I don't do things like this. We just don't. We don't get asked to do stuff like that. So you think, oh, God, this is amazing. Plus, it's Ken Branagh, who we know a little bit, who is a delight, very naughty, quite cheeky. That's the Ken that we know. But of course, he's gone on to become this kind of big grown-up director and actor. But we sort of know the junior Ken from years ago. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, all credit to Ken for casting us, because if you're going to put Jennifer and I together in a film like that, the first thought most people are going to have is, what are they taking the piss out of? When are they going to do the parody of this? Mm-hmm. And indeed, that was a temptation. And that's what we were doing quite a lot of the time offset. When the cameras weren't running, we're like wandering about thinking, well, look at these giant sets. Wouldn't it be great to have this as a set for a sketch? This would be perfect. And of course, when we're together, we're always having lots of fun. We're sniggering around and, finding the absurd in everything. But when it comes to it, there are producers and there's Ken to please. And it's shot on big 64 mil or whatever it is, I can't remember. But those big old-fashioned magazines on the camera, like he shoots it like
the big rolls,
the big Hollywood old and Sunset Boulevard days. That's what it looks like, and you've got a camera right next to your face, and you've got Ken Branagh right next to the camera watching you very carefully. So you better know your effing lines. You better turn up having done the work on the character, and you better hand it in. So there is definitely a pressure on something like that. But I don't mind that. I'm up for learning something new at all times. Of course, what I've got is a sense of the absurd going on as a kind of second narrative in my head at all times. I'm always thinking, this is ridiculous. And I'm always finding the funny in any situation, but I have to put reins on. It's literally like someone's got a halter on me. That rein it in, Dawn. This is not the moment. It's about being appropriate, isn't it, really?
And that was, like you were saying, that with that casting, because the trailer came out, and then sort of everyone, it's one of those sort of reveals of each cast member, and then you two appeared. I was like, oh, because it was in the original, it was Angela Lansbury and Betty Davis, wasn't it?
Well, no, it was Betty Davis and Maggie Smith.
Maggie Smith. Why did I think Angela?
No, because I think Angela Lansbury's also in she's in an Agatha Christie. Whether it's that one, I can't remember. I think she might have been in the same film, but playing a different character.
For some reason I had it that character was.
You're not
was
far
Lansbury.
out, actually, because I think also Ken Branagh and the writer on that slightly conflated some of the parts to just make it simpler, and also to bring some diversity into the film and to make it a film worth making in this day and age, frankly.
I like we said to simplify. These Agatha Christie ones are very, very complicated.
They are. Because the first one that he did was the Murder on the Orient Express, and of all the Agatha Christies, that one I remember the plot of that because it's so big. It's not who did it; it's they all did it. Oh, sorry if that's a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it.
I think it's been out a while now, not just the film, but as a property.
But Death on the Nile, I had to, and I have seen it, but I had to try and remember, oh God, actually, how does it work? And even when we were making it, I thought, this is good. It kind of peels that way, then it goes this way, then it goes that way. But what a hot cast as well. Bloody hell.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we watched it recently, and then we watched straight after we watched Murder on the Orient Express. Even though we'd seen that one before, but we'd sort of got into the Agatha Christie mood, and we were like, "Oh, this is delicious."
Yeah, and
it looks so good,
lush, so lush, and very slick. And the boys are they're just so handsome in all that gear. they really are. It was a delight, and to be with Russell Brand, who's a mate, and to be picked up every morning in a van very early with Jennifer and just gossip all the way in and spend most of the time eating the sandwiches, it's all good fun.
I'm now imagining them just sort of bundling you into a sack and going, get in the van, we're doing Agatha, get in the van, we're doing Agatha Christie. You were saying with the cast being delicious, you've had some very, you've worked with and sort of been interviewed alongside some really ridiculous people. I was looking up just in advance of this. Right, let's watch some clips and things. Do a refresher. You sang "Believe" in front of Cher. That was quite fun.
What a cheek! Yes, I did.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much the singing that it was the fact that you went now and just gave Cher the microphone.
Was that on Graham?
That was on Graham, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Cher, of all people, is a French and Saunders fan. And she has been to see our shows a couple of times. It just kind of turns up in the dressing room, very cash. You have a conversation about her belt and, what she's up to and whether you should go on holiday to Mexico or not. She's just very cool chick, very cool. And she's always been an FNS fan. And so taking the piss out of her is it's going to be received with open arms and she's going to be cool.
She's used to all of the drag versions.
Yeah, she is.
Of herself.
Yeah, I mean, she tells stories, doesn't she, about people saying to her, give me your car because you are the best one I've seen. Meaning that she's the best impersonator that people see.
Isn't there a story about Dolly Parton coming second in a Dolly Parton lookalike contest?
I bet. Jennifer's worked with Dolly for some reason. I went out for dinner with Dolly in LA. There are these moments. Jennifer does things like, I think it's because of Ab Fab. She did a little part in Friends and she did a little part in Roseanne. So she's had these kind of weird moments where she's been over in these giant sitcoms, and as a result of it, gone out for supper with various luminaries. It's all the stuff of great gossip when she gets home, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, with that, we're saying about the sort of British comedians being a sort of certain type of delicious twat. When you put it it's the chat show thing. When I see sort of you sat next to Cher, it's like two worlds, some sort of Avengers situation happening where all these different franchises of entertainment are just the other way. It's like John Waters next to Justin Bieber always got me on Graham.
Oh my God,
as well.
yes.
Well,
this is the
duo.
nature of a chat show, isn't it?
Yeah.
You are on a banquette with somebody you've admired or you haven't, or you've got no idea who they are. You've got to do a bit of homework to find out, whatever it is. And you have got to make something happen. You will have your own moment to talk to Graham about your thing, but then it's only polite, isn't it, to kind of also join in with everybody else's stories. And there are some stories the researcher will say to you beforehand, have you got any stories about dogs? Because so-and-so's got a funny dog story. So could you come on the back of that? Have you got one? So before you're kind of joining with these people. And my temptation, and I'm not going to do it anymore because I'm too old for it now. It's unseemly. But my temptation is, if there are delicious boys on there, I'm going to find a way to have a snog. One way or the other.
There's been a few. I saw online.
And I'm pathetically desperate. This is massive twat behaviour. I'm desperate to make sure that I have the moment. So I even will forego the reason that I'm on that show to talk about whatever I'm on there for, to get the kiss somehow. So I will lay it in at the beginning of the interview. I'll work on it a bit during the exactly. It takes so much work. It's so idiotic. But anyway,
There was on the no, that is again. This is why people again. It's a very British thing. You're not gonna get a very clean cut Hollywood actor sort of playing the clown and sort of tickling that situation. I love it. But on the subject of meeting people, you came to see the Drag Race show in Plymouth.
I did.
Which
Of
was
course, I
which
did.
was that was such a lovely day for us all. We were all, because it was coming towards the end of the first leg of the tour, and everyone was like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so tired." And
yeah.
suddenly they're like, "Dawn French is in catering." And then a few days after, we got a text saying Graham and Lulu in dressing room 1. So it was like a few days of like lovely people visiting us, which was
Good,
delicious.
good.
You
Well,
I can't remember
and
how.
let me tell you that of course the person I brought with me was my husband,
Nigel.
Nigel, and Nigel and I have been going to see drag in Plymouth and in London since we were young teenagers together. I mean, this is something we've done for years and years, and we have watched some of the most appalling drag, and somehow that's almost my favourite. Some of the at the back of the pub, somebody with just a dress, and a couple of eye flicks, miming to, I don't know, Dolly or whatever. That has been some of my favourite moments in my life with my husband. And so as drag has it stepped forward and become received and gone a bit more mainstream and been accepted and revered, for us, this is like a complete treat. So to go together in Plymouth to see tip top drag like that, but was like almost like a full circle. Like a full circle. It was wonderful.
And you and Nigel will continue going. So people will find you at the back of the pubs.
Always.
Sat there enjoying it. I guess in a way that I will get back to my original point in a second, but just before I forget, that kind of the sort of possibly 15 gins deep acts doing the Dolly Parton, that it's an inspiration for character, I think. As well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to ask later about the where, if there's like a route to a character. But before we get to that, in terms of working with and meeting sort of big names, you mentioned at the Plymouth show, and I think it came up because we were going to be at the Palladium, and Ginny said, I'm going to try and get Madonna's dressing room, and you said that the beginning of every season for French and Saunders, you'd ask Madonna.
Yeah.
And then was it a no, or you got no response?
Well, Madonna is our age and she's the same, we kind of all came up together, although she just, spiraled into this huge megastar. And I've met her once and Jennifer has met her once, latterly. But all the way through, we thought she belongs on our show somehow. In our fantasy, she would be our regular guest who'd bob into the odd sketch. This was our fantasy. And every time we sat down to write a series of French and Saunders, we wrote her into a sketch somewhere, even if it was just to come in the door and give us a slap and go out. We would always write her in. And it became a sort of talisman, like a lucky thing to have written her in. And then we would go through this pathetic procedure every single series of trying to get in touch with somebody who knew her, or her management, who immediately would slap us away, but trying to get through the back door to her PA or whatever. So we would get a bit closer. Could she come? Is she at all in England during that time? We can come to her, like desperately groveling. And we would get a very polite no every single time. We got quite close one time when she was making Evita in London, or somewhere near London, and we were trying to get her then, and we got a bit close then, but then eventually she sent us a message which was just, sorry ladies, I just can't fit it into the schedule. So in a way it became just the tradition. We will write her in, we will ask her, she will reject us, and on we go. It was like that.
I like that. It's a pretty good sort of ritual to have. But then what you said at the show was that when you did meet her, she said, "We've met before," and was sort of pointing at you, and you were going, "No, we've not met." And she kept insisting, and you would sort of politely trying to explain, "I would certainly remember if we'd met, Madonna."
Yes. And the weird thing is, when somebody's fairly potent, like she is, and she doesn't take any nonsense. And I also realised that if she ever had a peek at any French and Saunders, of course, if you don't turn up, if we invite you and you don't turn up, then we're going to have a bit of fun at your expense. So she became a little bit of a catchphrase, going, Madonna, Madonna. And we would always be talking to her and stuff, always with greatest of love, done with the best of intentions, no cruelty. But she became a bit of a running joke for us. And I suddenly thought, maybe she has seen that and she might not like us very much. But when you meet her and she says to you, I've met you before, and you think, no, you haven't. As you say, I would remember that. And I said to her, no, I think I remember that. If I met you, she went, no, I have. And I went, no, you haven't. And then you think, this is some kind of standoff we're having now. I know the truth is that we haven't. But you are Madonna, and you're telling me that we have.
You're almost tempted to believe that you have, and just go,
just concede, just bow down and go. Okay,
make up the wildest situation. You could go, it was in Morocco. It was 1974. I was surrounded by piles of grapes. It could be any situation. Just something you mentioned there I wanted to ask is that you thought maybe she'd seen it and been unhappy, being a little bit of a... Is there anyone that's ever come and gone, well, I wasn't very happy with that impression of me?
Well, I think the people who aren't very happy don't come and say something. They just sort of slither away and they let it be known to other people. Like I felt so guilty. I did a piss take of Sonia. Do you remember Sonia? Lovely Sonia.
Oh, Eurovision? No.
Sonia, did she might well have sung at Eurovision.
I feel like I've done a Pride with her.
She was a pop star, big pop star in the 80s. And I loved her. But of course, she's like little ginger kind of scouser. Very easy for me to be. And we were doing everybody, not very well, but we're putting a wig on and trying to be a bit like somebody. And she was perfect for me. But then I heard things like I was invited to go on breakfast telly for something. This was fairly soon after. And I heard that she was going to be on. I thought, oh, great, good, I can meet her at last. And then I heard she'd backed out. And I thought, oh, she's avoiding me. Oh, no. Oh, I don't want her to feel like I'm some kind of big bully. I would hate to think that anything we did upset anyone. And Jennifer once did a brilliant...
None of it's mean.
No, none of it's mean. But you never know what somebody can take offense with. And sometimes if you nail somebody, they perhaps didn't even know that was the thing about them. Do you know what I mean? It's like if anyone does a good impression, we're not impressionists. We're no good at that, but we're good at having a bit of fun around the edge. Don't claim to be impressionists. Don't claim to be accurate in any way. But Jennifer once was extremely accurate when she did. We did a silent witness piss take, and Jennifer was Amanda Burton, which was back in the days, before Amelia Fox did it. And there was just something about the way Jen did it. Just the way she looked a lot and took big, deep breaths and did lots of looking off and thinking. And quite a bad Northern Irish accent, which Jennifer was doing. And Amanda Burton, I mean, I've been at things where she's there and she just will not talk to me. She just, I think, oh no, because clearly you just think, I don't want to make an enemy of anybody, but you don't know. I would never want to be that girl, that mean girl, ever, ever, ever. But on the other hand, everything's up for piss take, including us.
It's. I think if someone, on a show like that, if someone did me, I'd be absolutely thrilled. And then you'd. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but then I'd want to come and do it with them.
Yeah,
do you know
exactly.
what I mean?
That's the joy. The joy is to be taking the piss out of somebody, and the door opens, and there they are. And that was always our plan for Madonna. We'd be in the middle of a Madonna rant or something, and the door would open, and there she'd be, and we'd have to shut up. Nothing we love better than being naughty schoolgirls caught out by big stars, who are coming and going, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing?
What is this? What is this? Is there, when you find a character, is there like a kind of root of it that you'll focus on? Like the one that springs to my mind straight away is the Jen doing the Marlena.
Oh yes.
which I think it's such a short little clip, and you sort of going and setting her up because it's so spot on, and it's built on so many tiny little characteristics. I mean, she's very easy to take the piss out of.
Yeah.
But just those little kind of the half shut one eye,
yes.
the mumbling, sort of borderline Edith Piaf with the kind of shrugging.
Yeah.
But is there like one thing that you kind of build it on and then it gets more absurd?
Well, it's so random. It's so random. When Jennifer and I are writing together, I mean, we haven't done it for years now, but whenever we were, one of us would arrive in the morning and go, wouldn't it be funny if, and it could be Jennifer saying it, could be me saying it. We might suggest Marlena because we happen to have seen that big special that she did. Wasn't it at the Palladium or somewhere like that? She did a big special. And so we might have seen it and think, this is right. But how can we do it? Let's do it in our white room. And if we did anything in our white room, which was like our French and Saunders home, it would be done a bit like children are doing it. Children are in the dressing up box, pretending to be somebody. Right, you push me on, right? I'll stick this broom up the back of you to make you stand up. All right, let's change the lighting so it looks great. We definitely talk about how you pull it off. And we might be just having a bit of fun about one tiny little thing, or enjoying the fact that you're revving up to the impression, if you like, and then you suddenly get it. So, you have all the little jokes around it. Suddenly the lighting changes and bloody hell, Jennifer is Marlena. Just for a moment, she's brilliantly good at it. But mostly it's about us kind of failing to get something right if it's an impression. Now, if it's a character, like Marlena's a real person, so you've got things to look at. If you're inventing a character like, say, God, years ago we came into work, and I can't remember which one of us suggested it. It's very equal. I think Jennifer said, don't you hate those kind of guys who sit in the pub and big fat guys who just sit in the pub and think that you're so lucky that they would wolf whistle at you, and they think you're so lucky that they would fancy you as you're walking past to go to the loo. And we started to talk about the kind of guys, and there were a couple of guys in a pub that we used to go to that were a bit like it. And then we start to think, right, how can we pull this off? We'll need prosthetics. We'll need padding. We were in our 30s or 40s at the time. To look like these guys took us a lot. And we just called them the fat men. And as is so often the case with characters Jennifer and I came up with, she's Fat Man 1, I'm Fat Man 2. And we're basically two versions of the same thing. We often did that. But once we got into those characters, then it took a while to put those prosthetics on and have the wig and the padding and all the rest of it. Oh, the fun we had. The fun we had sort of sexually molesting most of our crew. Because once we're in the characters, we're busy, goosing everybody. I probably wouldn't get away with it now, even though we were dressed up. But
troublemakers.
Troublemakers. And then it was Jennifer. It was genius. One day when we were getting the makeup on, which took a long time to put on and a long time to get off and hurt your skin, it was kind of put on with medical adhesive, those prosthetics back in the day. And it really used to hurt your face. But anyway, Jennifer said, minus the wigs on, before we put the wigs on, she said, these people look like the kind of posh women that live in the countryside and shoot everything that they see. Let's instead of putting the wigs on, let's put some headscarves on, put some blue eyeshadow on and a bit of coral lipstick, and let's make them that. So we managed to get two characters out of one makeup, if you like, out of one prosthetic. But it was genius of her to spot it. I didn't think about it. And the minute she started to talk about the kind of woman, I thought, yep, I know what you mean. The kind of woman who asks if they can be put on the compost when they're dead. The kind of no nonsense, fuss and nonsense, silly, but posh. Very different to the fat men. But this is, fat lady number 1 and 2. So that's what they were called.
I mean, there's the absurdity in these very normal people characters that could be grown into so much. So we've been rewatching Jam and Jerusalem.
Oh God, it was such good fun.
Well, it's one of it sort of highlights this small sort of what should be a mundane small village, that just has these utterly bizarre. I mean, my boyfriend Aaron's much more. He's watched it for years, and he's who showed me it. And yesterday we were just watching Joanna Lumley do a ride a bike without a chain in it, and then when inquired, "Wait, I'm going to get a tomato."
Yes.
Just
And she had
the
tits.
most.
Jennifer gave her these tits that were made out of bean bags that were just down round her waist. It was the most hilarious. It was a tiny cameo, but it was like absolutely hilarious. And there was broad humor in that, but there was also, I thought it was some of Jen's best ever writing. There were beautiful moments because Jennifer's character had a son that was away. He was a soldier fighting, and in Afghanistan, and she was very worried about him. And, so there were real tender moments, and her character and my character, who had multiple personality disorder, we had lovely little moments. I was her cleaner, and, there were tendernesses in that series. And Sue Johnston was so brilliant in it. There were wonderful moments. I was absolutely fuming when they only did 2 series and didn't continue it further. It was absolutely, I thought it was outrageous. I thought it was brilliant writing.
And yeah, it's funny, but like you say, heartwarming as well, because particularly Rosie, your character, and Margaret,
yes, Margaret,
the personalities, is that it's a very clowny character, to have, but also I think that gives it license to when there's sadness and heartbreak and something very real, it kind of hits harder because it's all like, oh, here she comes, it's going to be very silly, and then when there's something actually sad and about it, it makes it hit all the more harder. I was watching the interview you did with Julie Walters, and Julie kept saying about how comedians make for better actors, whereas straight actors don't necessarily make for good comedians.
I would agree with that.
I mean, I think it's because comedians are not afraid to be kind of ridiculous or grotesque or go too far, whereas a straight actor, maybe there's a level of composure. Why do you think comedians make for better?
Oh, it's and I'm not sure I could say it as a generalization, because there are some actors that have got brilliant comedy chops.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that when we're younger and we're training, or when we're deciding that this will be our lives, or we're by accident, which is kind of what happened to Jennifer and I, when you choose this life, you don't map out your great big career with a clever arc of how it's going to go and what kind of work you're going to do. I don't think you do that. Maybe some particular straight actors have done that and only want to act in straight stuff, but it means that there are actors in this world. David Tennant is probably one. Michael Sheen is another one. People who Julie Walters is certainly one who can be straight actors at the drop of a hat, and brilliant and believable, authentic, engaging, real. But they have they have funny bones, or they have comedy blood, and they can turn it on when they want to. And they also know the tone. They can recognize when it has to be very big, when it's a bit smaller, when it's a bit smaller. And Julie had a wonderful relationship with Victoria Wood, and that would be her comedy training right there. But I do think that it's a bit like clowning, that you have to be able to do the clowning to be able to stop doing the clowning, if you know what I mean. Not many people can do clowning without it looking just ridiculous, or just not being funny. You really open yourself with physical comedy, slapsticky sort of stuff. You really lose people very quickly. Lots of people don't like it, and they close off from you, and any comedy contract you've got with them that they offer you some goodwill is out the window immediately if you suddenly don't make them laugh. So you make yourself fairly vulnerable with that. And I think that's what a lot of comedians do, is they've learned how to make themselves a bit vulnerable. So they're not afraid.
Instinctual.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It can't necessarily be taught. No, it can't. Yeah, I don't.
And everyone's got different flavors of what they're good at. And that's why things like the Snatch Game are so revealing. Because people choose who they're going to be, and they might choose who they're going to be because they know how to do the makeup. They might choose who to be because they've got 2 gestures that go with that character,
Yeah.
that might win them that game. And that's not a bad instinct to do that. But if you have to improvise as that character, you better bring your game and you better have some chops. And some people just don't have that, and that's fine. Some people are fashion. Some people are funny. That's what it's all in the mix, isn't it? And it's watching someone pull out of their backpack, if you like, of talent, the different things that they can do. And it's always a bit of a surprise when you see a comedian, someone like David Jason, for instance, back in the day, or Bradley Walsh, I think, is a really good actor. But Bradley Walsh, hosts a game show. He's a stand-up. He's a song and dance guy. But occasionally, there he is as Pa Larkin, or there he is in Doctor Who, or there he is in, I don't know, did he do Coronation Street? I think he did. Where you just think, oh yeah, there's Bradley Walsh being a real person, and I'm totally buying it. That to me is, tip top, or like the triple threat, really. Definitely.
Yeah, I get that with the League of Gentlemen guys, particularly.
Agree.
Because I mean, I assume you've seen Inside Number 9.
I've seen Inside Number 9. Now I'm slightly jealous. I did Psychoville with them. I played a character in Psychoville, which was the series they did before Inside Number 9.
I loved Psychoville, and it's just I haven't thought about it for ages. And just as you've said it, it's unlocked a core memory.
Yeah.
In me.
Yeah.
Oh, can you remind me what your character was like? Because everyone is
she was called Joyce or something.
And but yes,
she was a midwife, and she had a doll that was made of blood. It was like really dark.
And she was stealing all the blood from the hospital.
She was, yeah. And she was just very angry. She was like psychotic. So she could be loving and midwifey, and then very quickly lost it and was violent to people. Verbally violent and physically violent, and it was just perfect character for those guys.
Is their writing sort of really delicious to work with? Because it goes from you can have the saddest moment, and then just suddenly there's a huge laugh.
Yes, and they are brilliant together. The two of them, they're very different, not just from each other, but from everyone else. I think there is no one in our country that writes a kind of gothic darkness like those two, and they will go right to it, and they can be massively broadly funny, but they're also creepily authentic. So they play these strange loners and oddbods and sons that haven't left home yet, and that they really capture it all. They've done it right from the beginning, haven't they? The League of Gentlemen.
That's
was
sort of the mundane as well, isn't it? Basing a character that hasn't left from home, but then giving them all of these layers. They had I sometimes think I've imagined it. Didn't they have a series based in Blackpool called like Pleasureland or something? And it was I'm sure maybe it was Mark Gatiss.
Are you?
It was one of them.
Okay, you might be mixing it up with there was something based in Blackpool that had music in it.
No, this wasn't. I remember. I think Mark Gatiss played a taxidermist that lived underneath like a sex shop. It was, and then I remember it starts with. Again, this all sounds like sort of peak them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
And I think it was one of those series that never quite took off because it was very strange. I think I found one episode online, and do you know when you try to explain like something that happened to people, and then they start looking at you like you've lost your mind, and you start thinking you've made it up? I am absolutely certain that one of the 4 League of Gentlemen, the 3 plus the one that no one sees,
yes,
were involved in this. I think it was called something like Pleasureland.
Yeah,
it begins by a man in a gorilla suit climbing up the Blackpool Tower.
God, it sounds amazing, even if it is only in your head.
Yeah, maybe I should join them for some sort of collab. You were saying about the sort of depth of their writing. The season finale for the most recent one, because I kind of sit down and go, right, time for a good old laugh, and there really wasn't any in this last particular one. I don't know if you've seen it, but it finished and I was sat there in silence like, oh. And again, the clowns can be the most tragic and
absolutely
gorgeous, and that collaborations because it's obviously Reese and Steve that do that. Is there like a dream collab that you would like to do?
Oh, well, the thing I've always wanted to do, but I think we've left it too late now. And I don't know what it is. And maybe it's never meant to be. Maybe it's only supposed to be a dream thing that you kind of move forward in your life with it as your little beacon, but you're never supposed to actually arrive there. But what I would love to do is a short film or some kind of one-off film where Jennifer and I play the daughters of Maggie Smith and Judi Dench, with Jennifer being Maggie Smith's daughter and me being Judi Dench's daughter, because weirdly, Judi Dench looks very much like my darling departed mum. Really, weirdly similar. She's a younger version, but she's got that sort of pretty little face that my mum had. And it slightly freaks me out. When you see people that look a bit too much like people and love, and especially since my mum's gone, I'm slightly obsessed with Judi, and I sort of have to hug her a bit when I see her too much. I think we're all obsessed with Judi, but I am especially. And I know that it would work. It would be true to play her daughter. And it would be very funny to watch Jennifer playing Maggie Smith's daughter. And Judi and Maggie have a very strong friendship. And I just think, I don't know what this is. Is it old mums who we have to look after? Is it warring, not sisters, but friends? What is it? I don't know what it is. And I've never come up with it. So I've never solved the puzzle. So I can't present a script to anybody.
I believe in this without any story, just on the cast alone. Have you ever mentioned it to them?
No, I've never mentioned it to them. I've mentioned it to Jennifer. And I've talked about it with the husband regularly. We often think, what about if it was this? What about if it was that? But I've never landed on something that makes me think, right, I now need to sit down and write that. I must write it. Otherwise, I'll never forgive myself. I've never quite come up with it. Or I keep thinking maybe there's a book. Maybe there's a book, a classic book even. Maybe there's something that's already written that the four of us should do. But, we're all getting older. And, the moment will come when it's not possible.
Or the moment will come when it happens.
Or the moment will come when it happens. Good for you to think like that optimistically.
That glass is half full. You were like something that you thought about. You've done so many, doing research before this. It just, the list went on and on.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So no, never apologize for being brilliant. You've done you've narrated audiobooks. You've written books. You've sort of serious acting and stage and panto and series and comedy sketch, and it goes on and on and on. Is there like a particular thing that you love more than anything else?
No, what I like is mixing it up, because what I can't cope with is if something isn't a challenge anymore. That's what I can't cope with. If I just think, that would be easy, or I know how to do that. I mean, you've got to have a certain amount of confidence about something, haven't you, to get started with it? You've got to think you might be able to pull it off. But if I think, I know how to write a book, then there's no point in doing it. And I don't know how to write a book. So I'm going to give myself that challenge. And I've written 4 novels now. And each one has been more difficult than the last because I've got to prove myself a bit. The first one, at least, I just had to see if I could write a story. It's different to writing an autobiography, which is your own story. To write a story with a narrative, with characters that you expect people to stick with for however many hours it takes to read a novel. That's quite demanding. And also, I was aware that people might buy it because it's me, but then I want them to buy the second book because they like the writing. So suddenly you're very revealed, and you need to take a bit of advice from editors who know what they're talking about. And I'm also in that class of writers that is regarded as popular fiction, as if popular fiction isn't all that. It's very interesting. It's quite snobby, the publishing world.
I've not heard that. Does that mean it's fiction written by popular people?
No, it means that it is bought. People buy it. Plenty of it, so it's popular with people. Now, it could mean that you are popular, therefore that the book becomes popular, but I think it just means that you're one of those people that supermarkets might sell your novels, and they sell well on Amazon, as if that's a bad thing.
Well, it's it means someone's reading a book.
Yeah, absolutely. But
like,
it's odd, isn't it? There's me and plenty of other people in this genre that are slightly looked down on from the publishing people. You don't get put up for prizes. You're not literary, in the way that posher, less popular writers might be, or more experienced writers. It might be that. And I'm still trying to get my head around. This is a world I don't know. I don't know all the manners and the rituals of the publishing world. I'm getting to know it as I go along.
But as an outsider, that sort of surprises me, because again, it gets books in people's hands, but also that's sort of a circular economy where if that's selling lots of books, that's making money for a publisher. Then that publisher can then give money to someone that isn't necessarily going to sell as many books.
Absolutely.
And the more money they have, the more chances. Yeah.
The popular writers are supporting lots of other new writers and all kinds of things, but it's slightly frowned on, and it's very odd. It's very odd situation, because part of me is good. I'm popular. Good. I certainly want people to read it. I'm not writing this to have 3 people read it. I want 300,000 people to read it. But I'm aware of these categories, and you're put into a category before you even knew you were in a category. And it's odd, isn't it? There's something, a rebel in me that just goes, oh, hang on, I'm not in this category. Don't put me there. I don't like it. I mean, very quickly, I had to fight against the kind of covers for my books that were suggested to me, only gently suggested, because I'm really, really good publishing people. But, they'd love you to have cupcakes and sort of kitten heels and somebody on a swing and, little foil things and girly, kind of approachable, female, cozy, cardigan, kind of all of that. And I thought, well, that's not what the writing is. So why would I do that? And that's not who I am. Please don't represent me like that. So I fought to have, very plain covers with one little image and red and black writing, a bit kind of textbooky. And, it's an effort to say, take me seriously. Some of this book will be funny, but take me seriously. I've taken it serious. I've taken a year to write it. I've cared about it. So take this writing seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, that's also one of the benefits of being sort of a large popular public figure, is that I guess you can do those things, and again that can set a precedent for them to maybe think about next time with someone when they're like, oh, why don't you use a cozy cardigan? Maybe, in a small way, that person that you've said, no, that's, I think the book deserves this and this, and maybe that will be in their heads for the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all learning together, as long as everyone trusts everyone else. Because I have to trust that they know that world better than I do, because I never understand quite how they advertise it. I was all for having TV adverts to tell people that I had a book out, and they're going, well, it's very hard to make a TV advert about a book because a book is so written and so internal and stuff. I said, yeah, but I can hold my book up and explain what it is in a way that it fits the book. But of course, buying TV advertising is very expensive, and publishers don't do that.
Well, we've got Instagram now.
I've got Instagram now, yeah.
You can You like Instagram very much, don't you?
I'm very new to it. I've only been on Instagram for, I think, about a year. I've done Twitter for longer than Instagram. Jennifer was the one who said to me, come on. She has dragged me on the tails of all the technological world since the beginning. I didn't have a mobile forever. And it was only when we went on tour and we couldn't get there was never a phone in the dressing room, and when I needed to call my little tiny daughter to say goodnight, and I'd be using her phone, and she said that you need to get your own phone. I said, but I don't want it.
You're running up my phone bill, Dawn.
Yeah, exactly. But I just do everything late. I come to everything late. Listen, I've only just arrived at leggings.
Oh, goodness. And how do you feel now that you're there?
Oh, they're appalling, but they're comfortable.
Well, I was going to say, just you were talking about sort of as a popular person. Do you often when people talk, they're like British comedy legend Dawn French, icon Dawn French. How does that feel to constantly be basically everyone? I mean, obviously it must feel lovely.
Well, yeah, there's an element of it that is that, but it's also very far removed from my real actual life. I come from a proper family, very grounded, kind of no nonsense. Nobody was an actor in my family. My brother finds it all vaguely preposterous, all of it. But enjoys it at the same time and wishes me well with it all. I mean, I think when he comes to see me performing, he honestly could eat the seat with his bum hole with embarrassment about the fact that what I do on stage is kind of what we did as kids, you know, mucking about in our home to make our parents laugh. But he's shyer and he wouldn't dream of standing up on stage and showing off. But I do it. And I mean, we're British, aren't we? So you're not supposed to show off. And yet, on the other hand, we're eccentric. So, you know, it's a weird relationship you have. And I'm also aware that, you know, fame's a funny old fucker, isn't it? It's just like, if you start to buy it yourself, you're doomed, I think. It's good to recognize it. It's lovely to have, you know, some of the little treats that go with it. But the minute you start to think you're just that bit shinier or just that bit more important, or that you've got a right to something over somebody else, you're fucked. You know, it's the Kool-Aid. It really is.
That is the most British thing I've ever heard. Like, do you know what? It's great, but you know, remember. And I think I think that's why a lot of British comedians have the sensibility they do, because we're just like you said at the very beginning, we're all massive twats.
We are.
Really?
And that's what's great. I love that. If you've made a bigger mistake than me, I'm going to laugh so heartily. I'm going to feel for your embarrassment when you made that mistake, and I'm going to love you more. That's how I feel about it. I cannot entirely love perfect people. I cannot understand why people only want to show us. It makes me sad, actually. It makes me sad, especially with young people.
They're liars.
Oh God!
No one's having a perfect life.
I know, and I feel for my own daughter and Jennifer's daughters and all their daughters who are feeling like they've got to have the big lips and they've got to be orange and they've got to have lashes on all the time and they've got to be, you know, they've got to have Kardashian shapes and impossible stuff, you know. Whereas their flawed, real beauty is just heavenly. It's bliss. And I'd love us to kind of creep back to that after all the fights women have had to be, you know, to be anywhere near equal. We've kind of gone and buggered it all up at the last minute by becoming Jessica Rabbits. I mean, and it's fine to do that when you're performing. That is great. I'm all for the peacocking, the look, the anything of any man, woman, whoever. But I like a real crunchy wanker.
And I think they make for the best friends.
Agree.
The best
and
friends.
It's people who love your faults and forgive you them and forgive any insensitivities or mistakes you make. And we all do make mistakes. I mean, when I've sat down to write these stories, in a funny way, I feel a bit fraudulent going on tour with these stories, because they're a little bit like me just being really honest about some silly stuff. I feel like I've not worked that hard at telling these stories because they're just true.
Well, you've done the hard work of processing being a massive twat in these situations. Because, you know, the show hasn't happened yet, and I don't know how much you want to say, but I'm assuming there's some situations there that some people would just fall down dead from being mortified, right?
Yes, mortified.
Am I right in assuming?
Yes, mortified.
I'm not trying to get you to give anything away, but I'm, you know, situations where you're maybe like, okay, got to keep my cool, and then something goes terribly wrong. And you're
terribly wrong. Or you start a little tiny lie. You know, you might say, oh, I don't know. You know, I was asked on a Harry Potter film that I did. I was asked by the director, "You're cool with working with animals, yeah?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love it." I'm thinking, yeah, well, I've got a dog. You know, I love animals. But then I sort of over pretended that I was fine with it, and I ended up having to work with a hippopotamus. And that is the story that I tell on stage about when you are confronted with a hippopotamus. What happens to you?
They're not friendly creatures, are they?
No, they're not.
They're quite large.
Yeah,
how close were you to the hippopotamus?
They can kill you. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say any more than that. I was very close. I had to hide behind it in order to do the scene that I did.
Why couldn't they do this with CGI?
Why couldn't they? There was an element of CGI. The CGI around everything, but they wanted a real animal. But, you know, I've also done that thing where we've all done it, I have responded to people on email where I think I'm sending the email to somebody about that person. And I've been absolutely vicious or rude for comedy purposes, and then found that I've sent it to the actual person. You know,
On Instagram, I mean, you're new to Instagram. Have you made the mistake yet of someone sending you something someone's posted on Instagram, and then you replied to it, but you realise you've replied to the original post and not the person?
Yeah. Oh
sending
God,
it?
yes. Oh God, yes. Oh, it's just you can. I've learnt my lesson when it comes to Twitter. You know, because I'm not. Jennifer said to me, "Oh, it's such an evil platform. You know, people troll you and whatever." And haven't had much of that. Little bits. If I'm ever political, you get a few come out of the woodwork. But there's the mute button, and it's such a delight.
Oh, it's delicious because nobody knows you've done it.
Nobody knows you've done it. You're just going quiet, 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 quiet. Shut
I do
up,
it all
shut
the
up,
time.
shut up.
My block list is very small, but my mute list is expansive.
Well, I worked out that the block list, people get angry, or they set up another account and have another go at you. And anyway, a lot of them are made up accounts. They're just bollocks, really. But I don't get trolled too much on Twitter. But what I did realise that if I have an opinion about something and people start coming at you, it was my temptation at the beginning to answer that, to explain myself. Whatever.
No, never answer.
I don't, because then what happens is a battle royal happens amongst your followers. So your followers go into battle with the trolls on your behalf. And you sit there on your little horse and you watch the battle take place on the field in front of you. And people are totally destroyed by your followers.
Like a selfish king, you're sat there with your banquet going, ha 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 ha, fight amongst thyself.
It is fantastic.
But with places like Twitter, you kind of get back what you put out, and I've been quite lucky. Other than the direct drag race response, because it's reality TV and people are absolutely batshit. I tend to be quite positive on Twitter.
Yes.
I don't get into arguments, so I don't really have a problem. And then there are other people that are from the same season as me that have constant issues, and I say it's because you replied to people. Because then, as soon as people realise that how they get a response, is by being a dickhead.
Well, that's right. But this is one of the things that nobody explains to you that comes with fame or notoriety of any sort, is that, and over the years I have certainly experienced this, certainly at the hands of the Daily Mail and others, but mainly them, is that they come at you with stories that are not really true. They might have a little seed of truth, or there was something someone said, but it gets blown out of proportion. And they're talking about your real life, your real family, whatever, and it feels like bullying. So it feels like you're being bullied. It is bullying. But you, unlike with a bully where you are supposed to stand up for yourself, this is the occasion when to zip it is the dignified thing. But it means that the misinformation remains in the ether about you in the public domain and is assumed to be the truth because you haven't come out against it. You haven't put your argument, but you would spend your whole life putting your arguments, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Yes, what you have to accept is you're going to be misrepresented. You're going to be misunderstood. You're going to be misquoted, and people are going to imagine certain things about your life. But also, those people, literally after they've read it, they hardly ever think about it ever again.
If they were like, Dawn French is a serial killer, you'd maybe go, I'm not.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny that when it's about me, I'm big enough and old enough now to think, oh, get lost. It doesn't leave it. But when it's about your family, when they talked about my dad, there was a woman who wrote a book about me, had completely the wrong story, and even quoted in this book that my parents had split up or something, which they never did. And my mother was so mortally hurt by this. So, to protect your darlings against people who are being careless and insensitive and stuff, that's very difficult because really, I sat down with a lawyer with my mum and said, what do we do about this? There are many, many inaccuracies in this book, and some of them are about my mum, and she's so upset. And the lawyer said, well, look, we can go to court about this, but you can only go to court about one thing at a time. It will cost a lot of money, and everybody will be very interested in this story, much more interested than they are right now.
Yeah, as we've seen in a recent bit of a circus of a law case, Yeah, I guess letting it go is easier because then you're not then drawing any attention to it. You know,
That's
if it's a
right.
book about you that you're not posting about, that you're not telling people about, then it doesn't mean anything.
No, that's right. But then you see,
if they
when
want,
that book first came out, which was when I was a lot younger, a very misrepresented, badly written book about me, it was the only book about me that was available. So fans would buy that book and bring it to me to sign. And yet it was full of lies and inaccuracies about my life and about my family. So I started to give the fan who would bring me the book at the end of the show to sign, they spent 20 quid on the book. I give the fan 20 quid and take the book and give them a signed photo. And eventually Jennifer started saying to me, "You're spending all your earnings, Dawn. You've got to stop
how do you afford this?" And
terrible.
then do people start learning then? They're like, right, if I get the book, it means I'll get the print for free because she'll give me the money back for the book. And then
in the end, what I did was write my own book. That was the answer. But I hadn't intended to write that book. I wrote that book to come out as to give people something that was, in my opinion, at least the truth and better written, you know.
Yeah, and you were saying about defending family or friends and things. Someone, again with the subject of Twitter, sort of bringing those together. You have worked with this particular gentleman, and there's a certain time of the day that is my favourite on Twitter, which is Neil Gaiman responds to people being mean about cast members day.
Yes.
Which is maybe a couple of hours a day. Where so at this point in time, the Sandman has been announced, at Neil Gaiman graphic novel. And Neil Gaiman, as the writer of this, tends to, we say don't reply to trolls and things, but if people are unkind about a casting or, maybe a gender swap or something, Neil Gaiman, as the writer, comes in and goes, well, I wrote this, and actually, she's perfect.
Yes.
He's very, and because you read the audiobook of Coraline.
I did. And he's a great friend. I met Neil through Lenny. They were friends. And in fact, they together wrote Neverwhere, which has had various lives. It had a radio life, and then I think it's had a TV life. And I think Len's just done something with Neil just recently as well.
And Nancy Boys.
Yeah, and Nancy Boys, that's right. So Neil was in our lives as a great friend for a long time, and then he asked me to do Coraline. Jennifer and I did a couple of characters in Coraline, and then I also read the audiobook, and that was a great honor for me and a great pleasure. And I suddenly realized the world of Neil Gaiman and how huge it is, and who the fans are, and how completely obsessed they are with it. It's a bit like being involved with J.K. Rowling's world. You suddenly are in a huge world that has all its own rules and stuff. So, it's weird. But I know Neil as a friend, and we are in touch, and I love him very much.
Yeah, and it's like you said, the world is so massive, and Coraline, he's what, like we were saying with the with other writers writing these sort of gothic, spectacular things. His writing is, there's some very, very adult things, as Sandman is about to be. And Coraline is obviously more suited to children, even though the film itself is quite frightening.
Yeah.
Whenever I rewatch it, I'm always forget that it's got kind of a bleak French art film vibe.
Definitely
about it.
What he manages to do is to write, a horror story for children that is their worst nightmare, having an other mother that, who's got the buttons for the eyes, who's horrible to you, but pretends to be nice. Where is your real mother? And, these are children's worst fears, but they're also adults' worst fears, to lose your children and to have misunderstood or overlooked their fears and be absent somehow in their lives. He manages to, fulfill both of those awful dreads, which is why he writes on many, many, many levels. He's such a genius. And yet he's a very casual man, but he's very inspiring. But he is a wanker. He is a massive wanker as well.
Yeah, but in the best possible way.
The best possible way. He's in the gang.
So,
he's in the wanker gang.
When this episode gets announced, it's going to be Dawn French calls Neil Gaiman
I know.
wanker.
Oh, no, I know. And I will get such terrible trouble from all the Neil Gaiman lovers. But Neil will be the first to put his hand up. and say, flawed as anything, makes mistakes. We all do. How the hell are you going to learn anything in life if you don't make mistakes?
That's what makes for beautiful people, beautiful artists, and just generally beautiful human beings.
Agree.
I think if there's one takeaway from this is that we should all revel in being an absolute wanker.
I'm a twat. You're a twat. And on we go with our twattery into the future.
I'm just looking at the time, and I've had you for the allotted time, so I'm going to ask one last thing.
All right, and I need to tell you one more thing.
Okay, so do you want? Okay, I'll ask you something.
Yeah.
So again, all that you said about you'd love to do the Maggie Smith and
Judi Dench.
Judi Dench. I was like Judy. Which one? Is there something that kind of could happen that you're like, oh, I'd really like to do that, like something that does exist, not something that you will bring into the world, like a role or an adaptation, or is something that maybe is yet to be adapted, and you think, if they ever make that, I want to be that.
Oh God, is there? I'm not exactly hankering after anything in particular. There are people that I would like to work with. Neil is one, and I'd like to do something physical, like act in something that he's written. He's a recurring person. I think, oh, I'd love to do something with him one day. I think and Ken, working with Ken was another, that was a tick.
Have you worked with Tim Burton?
I never worked with Tim Burton. I'd love to work with Tim Burton. Yeah, I'd love to. But there are people, they have their gangs, don't they? And the people that they rely on. And I understand that. We do too. I don't think I've got one of those things hanging over me. God, I need to get one. I need to get an aspiration.
They are good. They are. I mean, when you've done so many bloody things, it's. I think that aspiration will appear, and you'll suddenly go, "Oh no, that was the one."
That's it. I'll think about it. I'll think of something the minute we finish here. Of course. I mean, I did achieve one of the things that I really wanted to do the most in the world was to work with Fred Molina. Do you know Alfred Molina? Do you know this actor?
Yeah.
So I adore him.
I know him from Spider-Man and Feud.
That's
as well.
That's right. And he was in the John Lard, the film about the writer who was murdered by his lover, Kenneth Halliwell, Joe Orton. He was the lover in that film. Anyway, he's a brilliant actor, but he lives in America. And a few years back, quite a lot of years ago now, maybe 10 years ago, two brilliant twin sisters that I know called the Kilcoyne twins, Beth and Emma Kilcoyne, wrote the most wonderful series called Roger and Val Have Just Got In. And we did 2 series of it. And it's some of my most favourite work I've ever done. And hardly anyone's seen it because it was on BBC Two and it was a bit kind of nichey. But it's so beautifully written about this couple. And what transpires, what you find out is that they lost a child many, many years ago. And they're just trying to get by, but they love each other. And they live in this house, and literally the show starts, each episode starts when one person opens the door and goes, Val, I'm home, or Roger, I'm home. And in real time, there's half an hour of this couple then, when somebody's just got home from work. So it's all the putting your stuff down, putting the kettle on, catching up on what's happened during the day. But you enter the world of these two people and they're trying to get through life. And it's the most beautifully written comedy about little tiny things and big things. And the big thing is the love that they have, but all the minutiae of how they manage to get by and what annoys each other about each other. It's so beautifully realized. So I did get to work with Fred Molina, and that was that was something that I wanted to achieve, and I managed it.
And you got to do it, and like you said, not many people saw it, but that, just because the numbers,
I don't care about that.
It's this beautiful piece,
I don't
and
care
again,
about that.
You got to work.
Do you know, it's luck in life. Loads of people see Vicar of Dibley, loads of people see French and Saunders, loads of people see Ab Fab. Then we do lots of other things that not so many see, but it doesn't. I'm equally as
they
proud.
Can be the most delicious, and again, like is there anything in particular you are? Sorry, another question. Is there one thing that you are most proud of that you've put into the world?
God, that's hard. I suppose the absolute sublime best fun I've ever had is with Jennifer. You know, my clear moments of just pissing my gusset has been with that woman. You know, I have such happy memories of everything with her. However, doing Vicar was, again, different, you know, wonderful for different reasons, made another family of people, different setup, different aims, different achievements altogether. And then I tell you about, you know, Roger and Val. And anyway, I can't really answer that, except for that I adore Jennifer and love the bones of her. So really anything I do with her, I'm very happy with. We do a podcast together, which I love doing, you know, just because I get to be in a room with her and she's my darling.
Well, I feel like this should have been 2 or 3 episodes, really. Just you've got so many amazing, wonderful stories. There was something you wanted to ask me.
Yes, well, I want you to know that of all the people that do drag, you are the person who I would most like to have my makeup done by. I would love you to give me a bit of a Joe Black over.
I would. Oh, do you know what?
One day we should find the time just to have a gin.
Well,
and
you're doing
that.
the Palladium panto, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, but I'm playing a goodie in that, and it's quite.
I was assumed you were going to be the villain.
No, I was the villain last time, and I'm so excited about doing it because, of course, it's been put off for 2 years, and I resisted panto for a long time. I was asked pretty much every year, and I kept thinking, I don't know if they're funny enough, and they're not this, and they're not that. Then I saw the Palladium panto, saw Julian, saw Gary Wilmot being brilliant, you know, and just thought, this is amazing. And
which year did you see?
I saw one with Paul O'Grady the year before.
Cinderella.
Yes. Oh, fabulous. And I just thought, look at this. Look at the dancers. Look at the orchestra. I love this. So, you know, if you're going to do a panto, that is the one. So I agreed to do Snow White. One. And I just had the best time. I was absolutely knackered, dead. I mean, I would weep. I would get up and weep about how tired I was. But because I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know what it was like to do that. But I know now. And so I agreed to do this second one, Jack and the Beanstalk, which I'm doing this year. But of course, it's been put off for 2 years in a row. So we're back and we're able to do it. And I can't wait.
You're well rested for the run this time.
Yeah, I am.
But a bit of a full circle. So the episode of Drag Race, I might be wrong. The episode of Drag Race you were on was the one where they did the panto runway, wasn't it?
No. The one I was on, they did comedy. They did stand-up, of course. So
what I was going to say is that the panto look I had planned was based on Paul O'Grady in that particular production of Cinderella. I remember seeing a poster of it and I was like, Paul O'Grady looks like they could be my mother in it. Like, not my actual mum who looks like John Lithgow, but she does. But I remember looking at it going, this will stay in my mind. It will come in useful at some point. And then the thing came through and it said panto and I was like, Paul O'Grady?
Yes, absolutely. Here we come. But your painting is just exquisite. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Love it. And I you know, one day I'd like you to give me the pleasure of it.
I would so love
just
to
for
do
fun.
that.
Just for fun.
When you're in London, you'll be there for the whole time, won't you?
I will, but you get 1 day off every 7 days and you're dead.
Well, maybe, you know,
we need to find a time
not
when
on
I'm
your
alive.
day off. We'll find when you're alive and kicking, and we'll have many gins, and shall draw your eyebrows up to here.
Lovely.
Right, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'll say my goodbyes, and then I'll do a little secret goodbye after the recording.
All right.
I'm finishing the recording. Thank you so much, Dawn French.
Love you. Thank you for having me. Bye, darling. Bye. Bye.
Oh my god. Oh my goodness. What a thrill that was to record. I was so nervous. This was only the third one. It is episode 3, but it was the third one I recorded. And quite a lot of pressure. But I absolutely loved it, and I'm still on a high from it, to be honest with you all. I hope you loved it. It was nothing but a pleasure to record. And then we are returning next week with another guest. So again, please to support me in any way you'd like. You can buy shirts, just repost things, leave nice reviews, or come see me on tour with Club Cataclysm across the UK and Ireland in October and November 2022. Okay, darling, see you next week, and a massive thank you again to the glorious Dawn French.